How's the Detroit Sports Podcast going?
Hey, everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the DocNJock podcast. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. I'm looking over there at the chair. It's empty right now. Where is Cousin Adam? Wait a minute. He is here. Cuz, where in the world are you, my friend?
It's like, where's Waldo, bro? Honestly, it's like, where's Waldo? I'm in South Bend right now. We're getting my wife all moved in. You will not realize how much you actually love a woman until you have to put furniture together with an Allen wrench. If you guys don't kill each other, you need to marry her.
Here at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, if Adam is in Brazil, South Bend, Indiana, he's still gonna come, bring the noise. I can't wait. Do you give me permission to share the bootleg-ass setup that you tried to send me and be like,
yeah,
I'm like, dude, you're supposed to give me confidence, and you're like, bro, look at this bootleg-ass setup that I got going on. I'm like, oh, God. So when I push the button, I'm like, I'm prepared for static. I'm prepared to hear a bunch of construction going on. You're supposed to be like, it's all good, bro. I've done this 1,000 times. There's no problems. I pushed the button. There was no sound. I said, hey, cuz, what's up? You came through loud and clear. It sounds good, bro. I appreciate and respect your dedication, bro. It's awesome.
Yeah, man, no problem. Hey, we got lucky. I think AT&T is finally done banging away. They woke me up at 6 o'clock this morning trying to install some fiber optic cable. They're doing it like right above the bed. They've just been pounding away for hours, and finally they got done.
How did you end up in South Bend? Did you get there Tuesday, or how was the drive? Was it smooth getting there?
Yeah, getting here was no problem. We got here actually Monday afternoon. Moving all the furniture was a total pain in the butt. The apartment that the wife has, it's on the third floor, and there are no elevators, so you had to carry everything up. I felt bad for the moving guys because we had some really, really heavy stuff. Like the base of our bed is massive. And these guys had to lug this thing up 3 flights of stairs. But no, we got in Monday, and it's just kind of been, let's assemble this, let's put this together, let's put that together. Last night, we didn't end up going to bed till probably about 2 o'clock, and we made a huge dent. So hopefully by the time 2 o'clock comes around today, 2 in the morning, we'll get everything done, and it'll be decent. My mom's supposed to be coming over here to check everything out today when this podcast drops.
Nice. Very good stuff. When are you coming back in town?
I think we're going to come back either Saturday night or Sunday. For those who don't know, my wife is what we deem a paper American. And she'll be going for her citizenship test on Monday, so we'll be getting that taken care of.
Listen.
So she got to come in during over the weekend. We'll be back.
Listen, I'm proud of you because I would not even bother to tackle trying to put together any furniture. I'd be like, okay, I'm bringing 4 or 5 handyman with me, and I'm trying to do this and that because it would take me double the amount of time. So good for you. I'm happy to see the setup. I'm happy to see that we can keep this rolling even with you in South Bend. So we got a lot to get to on this podcast. We got a lot to get to regarding the Pistons. I mean, I think you and I both had the same reaction when we saw the stat line and we saw Donovan Mitchell drop 33 points on OKC. I think we were both going, all right, we got to talk about this. And of course, today's the day. When this podcast drops, it's the draft, baby. And I know you've been reading. You and I both have prepared for this episode where we can drop the knowledge on who the Lions should take, who would be a good pick, who would be a bad pick. So segments 2 and 3 are going to be devoted to the Lions. You know we're going to deliver the noise. But we got to ease into this podcast and talk about the Detroit Pistons. And I know when you saw Donovan Mitchell light up OKC and have done some things significantly, he's done a really great job. The Utah Jazz this season have performed well. They put OKC on the brink of elimination. And when we saw everybody in Detroit, when they saw Donovan Mitchell and they saw that stat line, everybody got jealous. Everybody got frustrated in that he went one pick after Luke Kennard. And it's just disappointing. What did you make of it? When you saw that, of course, you had to be pissed, right, cuz?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this guy's out there killing it, and then we got Luke Kennard. Hey, look, Luke Kennard may turn into a good player. But right now, Donovan Mitchell is a special player. And you will take a special player over a good player every single day of the week, and I want the special player. Look, Donovan Mitchell's preseason, he's outperforming what he did in the regular season. Or what he's doing in the postseason. He's outperforming what he did in the regular season. It's amazing. Only special guys can do this. Only special guys can transcend what they sit there and they do night in, night out. He has another gear. He has another level that he can take it to. And I don't think Luke Kennard will ever match what Donovan Mitchell is doing right now. So let that sink in. What's that tell you about the ceiling for Luke Kennard? Whereas Donovan Mitchell, it's boundless. I think at this point, if you're Tom Gores, you have to look at just what Stan Van Gundy has done draft-wise, and you have to take into account that he has missed time and time and time again. And what it comes down to for me is Stan Van Gundy's career with the Detroit Pistons should be tied to Donovan Mitchell. He needs to go because he did not draft Donovan Mitchell. He didn't get it right. And I don't think you can put it any other way. He has missed so many times. And you have a special player like Donovan Mitchell who just kind of fell to you. It wasn't like you had to really decide between him and somebody else who might be a very good player. You took a guy because he can kind of hit three-pointers. That's the reason why you took Luke Kennard. And Luke Kennard sat on your bench for most of the season. Whereas this guy's out there in Utah and he's balling. I mean, am I wrong here? Am I out of line for thinking that Stan Van Gundy and his career should be tied to Donovan Mitchell?
No, absolutely not, because of the fact that once you see what Luke Kennard can do right now, year one, he didn't even get a chance to play as much as Donovan Mitchell has played. And so why is that? One of the bigger questions that people have is if Donovan Mitchell would have been drafted by the Pistons and Luke Kennard would have went out to Utah, would the roles be reversed? Because Utah has struggled. They've allowed Donovan Mitchell to play an entire season, play a lot of minutes, and his talent was able to emerge. Whereas our young cats, they sit on the bench, they take a little bit of time. Luke Kennard can shoot the three, but not at the same level clip as Donovan Mitchell. And everybody in town, once it was time, around that time the Pistons were going to draft last year, said, okay, at this time, if you can take Donovan Mitchell, you take him. And so once they announced Luke Kennard, everybody was like, we already can see this coming. But here's the funny part. We tweet out on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast every day. We have these debates. And do you know what, a handful of people messaged us? They said, look, let's not really put SVG to the fire. Other teams passed on Donovan Mitchell as well. And I said, no, I don't care about what other teams are doing. I care about what the Pistons are doing. And when SVG is going to probably stick around based upon Tom Gores and his 5-6 meetings to decide what to do, when you see a Donovan Mitchell produce, he should be a Detroit Piston. He should be a guy contributing right now. And so I can't believe people would actually defend SVG in terms of how he's drafted. It's been abysmal. That's the only way you can look at it. And that's why many fans want him to be gone. They wanted Tom Gores to go, okay, you had an opportunity to watch the game. You could sit in the luxury in LA in your $1 billion mansion and look at it and go, wow, Donovan Mitchell, this guy's crazy. Could we have gotten him? Well, yeah, we could have gotten him. We drafted Luke Kennard. And it's disappointing. And yes, absolutely, you're not out of line at all. I think that why SVG, basically what everyone's saying is he's going to lose his job as the president of the Pistons is because he can't evaluate talent properly enough to put together a roster that anybody would be happy with.
Absolutely. And if you get a chance, go and look at go look at his stat lines. Look at what he did in the regular season and then compare that and contrast that to what he's done this postseason. It's amazing. Every single one of his stats is elevated. He's making more free throws. He's sitting there making more points, grabbing more rebounds, stealing more balls, more assists. Everything that he has done this postseason has been elevated. He is such a special player. It drives me insane for a guy like Stan Van Gundy to sit there and consistently miss on draft picks. I mean, this isn't the first guy that he's missed on. You go back to the 2017 the 2015 draft, missing on guys. He missed on the 2017 draft. It's just like it's one draft after another. He can't evaluate talent, and that's an issue.
Exactly. When you look at the roster, you got Henry Ellenson, you got Stanley Johnson, and you got Luke Kennard. And you go to and you look at that and you go, that's the building block of what you're going to count on to advance in the East or try to compete in the West. Let's just say, for example, they do decide to change up the playoffs and it's just 1 through 16 straight up. Let's say first round, you're playing the likes of an OKC. You're not going to compete, even with a team right now that's on the verge of eliminating. You're not going to compete. And even in the East, you're not even getting to the postseason with this roster. unfortunately, everybody can sit and say, let's be patient. Let's see if Stanley's going to ever become a professional and play defense. Let's see if Luke Kennard can develop some athleticism. It's not like that in the world of sports. It's a what can you do for me now situation. Donovan Mitchell is not only dropping these stats in the regular season, it's on prime time. It's versus OKC and their big three. It's not when the lights are the dimmest. It's when the lights are the brightest that he's doing that. And you can't pass up on a guy like that. And so I think that's why I'm shocked. I'm literally shocked at the way Tom Gores is addressing this. Are you? Because when you look at it and you say, it's taken you 5-6 meetings to decide what to do, and it's kind of off-putting to a lot of fans here in Detroit because are you really serious about helping the Pistons? You did not make the postseason this season with this roster, and then Stan Van Gundy was tasked with maybe trying to make some moves. You bring on a Blake Griffin and pay him a huge amount of money, which basically saddles your organization for the next 2 or 3 years. So you're basically saying to your fans, this is what we got. Are you confident? Most people are coming back and the return is, hell no, I'm not confident. Hell no. We don't think that this roster with Reggie Jackson, Andre, and Blake is going to compete. Yeah, you can win in the regular season, but can you take that to playoff success? The first thing that anybody's going to say is, when it's crunch time, Blake Griffin's ass is going to be sitting on the bench.
I'm totally blown away by the way Tom Gores has handled this. When I go and I read the newspaper and I see quotes like, we have to make changes, but I'm not really sure what we have to do, that doesn't make me feel really good. I can tell you what you need to do, Tom. You need to get rid of Stan. You need to blow his entire staff out. You need to get a guy in here who knows how to evaluate talent. Again, Donovan Mitchell is not just the issue here. There are other guys. You go back to 2015, you could have Devin Booker. That's another guy who can sit there and help your team, and he'd be a much better player than Stanley Johnson. You drafted Stanley Johnson to be a defensive stopper, and I just don't see it out of him. He can't play offense. He can't really do a great job on defense. I don't like the way this team is constructed. You traded away all of your assets to get a guy like Blake Griffin, who is putting you at your ceiling as far as the salary cap goes. So now you can't sit there and go out and add guys that are going to help benefit this team. So basically what you're left with is Reggie Jackson when he's healthy, if he's healthy, Blake Griffin when he's not breaking down, and Andre Drummond, who, if this was, 10, 15 years ago, he'd be an all-star caliber player. But the game has evolved. The league has evolved. Guys who stand 3 feet away from the basket and either A, guard the rim, grab the rebounds, or put the ball back up in the hoop, they're there, but they're not as effective as the other guys in this league right now. Right now, you've got guys, look at Mo Wagner. Mo Wagner is a perfect example of what the league is turning into. He's a 6'7" guy who can sit there, turn around, and nail a three-point shot from beyond the arc. You don't have big guys who have to stand 3 feet next to the basket anymore. The game is constantly moving, constantly evolving. It's become a positionless game where now you've got big guys who can dribble the ball. Look at Anthony Davis. That's another guy. He can play point guard if you need him to, if you have to. It blows my mind the way this team is put together. Stan is so antiquated in the way that he runs his offense, in the way that he has built this team, and now he's got to pay for it. He needs to be blown out. I don't understand why Stan Van Gundy has this meeting with Tom Gores has been pushed back. I just don't get it. And what worries me is that Tom Gores is pushing this meeting back because he's trying to sit there and figure out what his options are, who's available, who he can go out there and get. Because I don't think Chauncey's coming in here. I don't think Chauncey wants this. I don't know how you can sell what you got to anybody right now. How do you go turn around to a future executive and say, hey, look, we've got 0 draft picks. We've got no money because we're maxed out at the salary cap. But, hey, we got 3 guys who we believe are superstars. And Andre Drummond, not a superstar. Blake Griffin, not a superstar anymore. And Reggie Jackson, hardly ever healthy. So how can he even be a star? How do you turn around and how do you sell that to somebody? You can't.
Exactly,
cause do that.
Yeah, cause let's look at it this way too. Okay, because you're having these meetings, and Stan Van Gundy is going into the 5th year of his contract. He's already made $28 million. Are you? Would you say that you've gotten the return on investment on Stan Van Gundy? No. So would you then go and extend him? Because if you're meeting with Stan Van Gundy, potentially one of the things you're going to talk about is, should Stan Van Gundy get extended? And obviously the answer would be no. So are you willing then to let Stan Van become a lame duck coach? Everybody then knows it. And let's say now we're around February and it's a total disaster. Don't you think if there's going to be a new president, what's the first thing he's going to do? He's going to blow out Stan Van Gundy. And so you're basically delaying this by 8 months when you can do it now. That's why it doesn't make any sense. That's why people are laughing at the Pistons and Tom Gores, because when you look at sports, there's a certain protocol on how things go. If the Pistons hire a new president, you think he's going to want Stan Van Gundy? No, he's going to want his own guy. So in essence, if you're not going to extend Stan Van Gundy, these are easy questions to ask because you and I are asking them. Are you going to extend Stan Van Gundy? No. Do you think if a new president is going to come to town, is he going to keep and retain Stan Van Gundy? No. Easy. Okay, we'll have some coffee, have some donuts, and when I'm sitting in my movie screen watching some television or watching the playoffs, I'm like, okay, dude, we're not anywhere close. I'm blowing out Stan Van Gundy. Eat the last $7 million, and let's start over. Let's start a direction where the fans are going to come, because when you look at the total picture, fans haven't bought in. Fans are disgruntled. You've let Stan Van Gundy basically make huge decisions for the future. It doesn't seem like it would take more than one meeting over half an hour to decide what to do. And basically anybody but Stan Van Gundy would be a good option right now for the Detroit Pistons. It's mind-boggling that he doesn't understand this concept, and it's taken him this long to decide. And so everybody's thinking Stan Van's going to be the coach next year, and it's not going to be as good because Stan Van, for whatever reason, the mix hasn't been good here in Detroit.
What do you think if Tom Gores does decide to extend Stan?
Oh, my God.
At this point, it wouldn't surprise me because he has no clue. He doesn't have a pulse on this team, and I don't think he understands how basketball works or how basketball has evolved. I think he looks at the Detroit Pistons as his plaything. This is his toy. When he has guys who want to come into town, or he has business clients that he wants to take around to different places, he says, oh, let's go view my team. Let's go check this out. We'll get courtside, and we'll get all hammered and drunk, and we'll high-five the players, because that's what he does. I don't think he has a pulse or a read on the NBA, much less his own team. So it wouldn't shock me or surprise me if the fan.
It wouldn't shock many. And you look at it and you say, okay, realistically, when you start seeing what's going on in the NBA, the buzz is with the Sixers. It's with the Utah Jazz. It's with Golden State. That's where the buzz is at. It's not with the Detroit Pistons. And so it's embarrassing to watch.
Amazing? All the teams that you named, they sat there and they were able to do things in the draft. And what did Stan get rid of? He got rid of all of his assets in the draft. Like the formula is right there. It's sitting in front of you. All you've got to do is pick it up, read it, and then just apply it. It's not that difficult. If you're the Detroit Pistons, you just have to lose. Just lose, and don't trade away your draft picks. You need to acquire more draft picks. That was the one thing about this season that I found so interesting. You had guys who were either on one-year deals or were going to become free agents following this year. You had guys that you could trade, guys with palpable contracts. You had trade commodities, guys you could give away and get draft picks in return. The Pistons didn't have to sit there and go on this horrible tear of just kind of losing game after game after game. But you had guys, you had 2 or 3 guys that you could have traded away and sat there and got number one, you got first-round draft picks from. And then you could have sat there and you could have matched a couple of those together and moved up if you needed to. Going forward with this team, do you see any way that Blake Griffin, Andre Drummond, and Reggie Jackson coexist? And do you believe that they have to trade one of these guys? And if so, which one of these guys would you get rid of?
Man, that's the problem, in that I think the Pistons are handcuffed. I think the Pistons are handcuffed, and here's the part that everybody's scared about. Here's the biggest worry, okay? Because with those 3, can all 3 in combination, in tandem, stay healthy? That's the part that's concerning, because going into it right now, no. Either Reggie or Blake Griffin, is going to miss probably a little bit of stretch of time next season. And hopefully it's not during the key stretches when you need them to win, when you're making a playoff push. Or, heaven forbid, let's say you get up 2-0 in a series and Blake Griffin goes down with an ankle injury. That's why LA was willing to let him go, because he's aging, his contract is huge, and he's brittle. Look, this season, if you don't want to forecast in the future, if you just want to look this season that just took place, okay? The Pistons went on a run when Reggie Jackson came back. Was Blake Griffin there? No, he wasn't there. The Pistons could have made the playoffs this year. They could have made the 8th seed had they started to perform a little bit better. But where was Blake Griffin? How funny is that we did a poll on our Twitter page that somebody won and called correctly, and we asked, how many games is Blake Griffin going to play with the Pistons before he gets hurt? And someone nailed it. He played 25 games, and then he got hurt. That's just what's going to happen. So we're not hating. We're not being too cynical. That's what's going to happen. Nobody can count on these three guys to stay healthy for an entire season, let alone the playoffs. That's why everybody's so upset. And you're exactly right. Everybody builds through the draft. That's what everyone's doing. Just look at the Sixers. And I know people are saying, they haven't won anything yet. They won a series. We haven't done that. They've won a playoff series. They got buzz. People are excited. Yeah.
We haven't won a playoff game yet, have we, since Stan Van Gundy's been here?
I think won one.
They haven't even won a playoff game.
I think they won one. Or they got swept. It's just embarrassing all around, right? It's not. Yeah. It's bad. It's bad all around, and it's one of those things where when you start looking at the recipe with the Detroit Pistons, it's coming back all rotten, and it's really tough to get behind. And when you look at it, the biggest problem is really not Stan Van Gundy. It's Tom Gores. He's not a basketball mind, and he's tasked with putting together an organization that can help because he's not there. He's not there on the day-to-day pulse. So far, his reign has been pretty epic, and we can start talking about, his reign as being one of the worst so far as an owner in Detroit. It's getting that bad.
Let me ask you this. So if you were able to, I think out of the three players that are supposed to be your big three here, I don't think anybody wants Blake. I think the only people who are stupid enough to take Blake was Stan Van Gundy, the Detroit Pistons. I don't think anybody wants Reggie because he's damaged goods. The book's out there on him, right? I think the one guy that you have that you might be able to trade is Andre Drummond. And I know Tom Gores loves Andre. They're like butt boys. If you could trade Andre Drummond to a team who would know how to utilize him correctly and get the most out of him, and that's depending on if this head coach was to stay there, because they've had players like him before. I think the San Antonio Spurs would be a perfect option for a guy like Andre Drummond. You could trade Andre over to San Antonio. If Pop stays, Pop knows how to utilize a guy who needs to stand 3 feet next to the basket. You could trade Andre for Kawhi. You're probably going to have to throw something else in there because Kawhi's contract is about there's a year less, and he's got about $4 million per year difference than Andre. So you're going to have to throw something else in there to kind of help balance it all out. But I think you could straight up trade Andre and Kawhi for each other, and I think Kawhi Leonard makes your team that much better.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would do it in a heartbeat, of course.
Kawhi has basically pushed himself out of San Antonio right now, and you need to find a spot for somebody who knows how to utilize a big like Andre Drummond. Andre Drummond's not your modern day big. He's, like I said, he's almost antiquated. He is like a 1990s big. He reminds me a lot of guys like Shaquille O'Neal, even Tim Duncan. He even knew how to have a mid-range game and could hit shots. Andre Drummond doesn't necessarily have that. He's got to stand close to the basket. I think you could trade him to San Antonio. They would maximize everything that they could get out of him. You get Kawhi Leonard. He's your superstar. There's your superstar. There's a guy who can play defense, can play offense, especially when he's engaged. Right now, he's not engaged. There's something that is wrong in the mix with him in San Antonio, especially with Pop. And I don't know if it has to do with Pop's wife being sick and then her dying. I'm not sure. There's too much speculation there. But something is not right in that mix. I think you could trade Andre for Kawhi. You're going to have to throw a little something in there. I think it helps both teams out.
Yeah.
You're going to get a bonus if you're in San Antonio because you're going to get something in return here, or a guy who doesn't want to be there. In Detroit, you're going to get your superstar. You just have to sign him to that next contract, and I don't know if he's going to want to stay here.
Exactly. And so, the sad part is I think you and I are probably having more discussions about improving the team than the Pistons. Stan Van and Tom are just talking about, okay, how are we going to utilize Stanley better? How are we going to utilize Luke better? How is Henry Ellenson going to get in the mix? How are we going to perform with the roster that we have? I bet you we've probably had more conversation about player acquisition than the Pistons have, and that's sad. And it might sound crazy, but it might be really true because I think they've put their eggs, because look what happened when Blake Griffin was signed. It literally looked like Tom Gores was going to wet himself. He was so excited. We got our superstar. So I think they're really looking at how do we complement the big three here in Detroit, and it's just laughable because you know what? I think what we can honestly say before break is the Pistons maybe really think they're on the verge of something, and that's the most scary part is that you and I know, everybody knows that's a paying customer. The Pistons are nowhere near a championship level team, but I don't think the message is getting to the higher ups, and that's freaking scary, freaking scary.
You're spot on. You are spot on. The brain trust in this organization just doesn't get it, and they don't know how to put a team together and how to build around it. And that's the problem. That's why we are where we're at. They don't know how to draft. They don't know how to acquire talent. They don't see how the NBA has evolved, which is we're just two schmoes, two dudes, two schmucks who sit there in front of microphones and have opinions. And we watch enough basketball to understand what is going on in the NBA. And these guys who sit there, eat, breathe, live it, don't get it. They don't get it. It's so frustrating, especially if you're a Detroit Pistons fan, because I don't see how it gets any better. I don't know how you can turn it around because you don't have the money and you don't have the resources right now.
All right, we're going to take our first timeout. We'll come back, and everyone's waited for it. Doc and Jock, the country, Lions fans, we all want to know who are the Lions going to take at number 20. It's tonight, baby. Everybody's going to be glued to their televisions. NFL draft. You know Doc and Jock are going to talk about it. Stay with us right after this. You're listening to Doc and Jock on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Doc and Jock here for our host site, Podomatic.com. When Adam and I first started this project, we were looking for a great place to host all of our recorded audio. And thank goodness we found Podomatic. Why do we use them? Imagine if we got a great guest on. Imagine if the verbal warfare or breaking down the Pistons just happened and we couldn't upload it quickly to our host site. Then you couldn't listen to it. Then we could not have reached the level of success that we were able to. If you're going to start a brand new podcast, it's not microphones, it's not mixers, it's not headgear. No, the first thing you got to think about is where are we going to put our recorded audio? And thank goodness we found Podomatic. If you're looking to start a brand new podcast, Adam, John, Jason, Vito, Steve, everybody affiliated with the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, we're going to recommend one host site and one host site alone, Podomatic.com. Thanks, everybody, for staying with us. Doc here in the Sterling Heights studios. Adam rocking it in South Bend, Indiana, sounding crystal clear. I can't wait to break down the draft with you. I've read a lot of mock drafts in the last 24 hours. People are now giving out their final mock drafts, and it is starting to make sense that people are kind of targeting a couple players for the Detroit Lions. They're either looking at the running back position. Darius Geis is getting a lot of run nationally, locally, and Deron Payne is also getting a lot of love. The defensive tackle, I believe, from Alabama is getting a lot of love in mock drafts. And so I put out on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, I said, how would you feel if the Lions took Darius Geis, running back? And I almost flipped my lid because a lot of people are saying, yeah, a lot of things would have to go bad for the Lions to take Darius Geis because there's so much more value. So for me, if that name comes across the board, if Roger Goodell goes up there and announces at number 20 that the Lions take running back Darius Geis, I'm probably going to be disappointed and be very upset because you can get running backs with talent at a later position. Darius Geis, not the best fit. I know you want to solidify that position. Do it in later rounds like championship teams have done. I'm happy with Deron Payne. I'm happy with other players that can do some things. I'm happy with Rashaan Evans. I'm happy with a defender that can cause pressure. I'm happy with even a Tavon Wilson. Fine, you want to get someone like that? No problem. But if you call out running back, first round number 20, DOC's not happy.
And I understand that. I don't know, though. I've seen a couple different mock drafts. I've seen one this morning by Bill Schrader, and it had Darius Geis falling all the way to, I believe, 44 in the second round. The Lions are drafting at 51. So I think if that was the case, and if I was the Lions, I would move up to get him. It's interesting, and I understand what you're saying as far as not drafting the running back in that first round because there's so many other needs that you have. I wouldn't necessarily be upset if Darius Geis was that pick. That wouldn't really bother me. There are two guys, though, that would absolutely piss me off if they took him. And one is Marcus Davenport. He's that defensive end out of, San Antonio, Texas State. He's a really athletic guy. He's super raw, though. So you're going to have to – he's a coach-him-up kind of player. And everybody is just blown away by his combine numbers and kind of what he's done at the Senior Bowl. But he is still so raw. You've got to almost dumb down your defense and your defensive scheme and you basically have to be like, look, quarterback, rush, go get him. That's kind of where he's at. He's got to grow into that position. I don't know if I want to invest my number 20th overall pick into a guy that I've got to develop and I've got to help coach up and teach the game to. The other guy who I would be really upset about if they went out and they grabbed him would be Will Hernandez. He's the guard out of UTEP. And it's not so much that I don't want them to add to that offensive line, because, again, I believe you got to build through the trenches. I just don't think investing your 20th overall pick in a guard, a position that, to me, it seems like you've already addressed in free agency, or you have pieces on this roster that can help and will be able to solidify that spot. If you move Graham Glasgow over to center, I think Joe Dahl can fill in as a guard. I think you've gone out and you've added a couple guys through free agency that can sit there and compete for that job and win that job and help solidify that offensive line. So I don't necessarily want you to go out and invest a high-round draft pick in an offensive lineman. I think you need to invest either in your defensive line or you need to invest in your running back. And I think that's kind of where they need to go. If I'm looking at this draft and there is a guy who I want more than anyone else right now, and it's going to be hard to pick because, they're drafting at 20. So anything and everything can kind of happen and really kind of skew what you're going to do. But if they were able to go get a guy like Harold Landry, I'd be ecstatic about. Deron Payne, I'd be ecstatic about. So helping to solidify your defensive line is kind of the direction I want to go in as well. I wouldn't be upset if they end up taking Darius Geis. If they take him, I'm cool with that too. It's not gonna make me feel horrible about myself. Like, you sound like you're gonna need to be talked off a ledge. Like, I'm gonna have to be on the phone with you later on tonight and just be like, dude, don't do it. It's gonna be okay. Wait till round 2. Who's that guy for you though that you really want them to go out and target?
I'm happy with somebody from Alabama. I'm looking at some of the numbers at Alabama's defense. You just look at what they were able to do in terms of winning the national title, a vaunted defense. So I'm okay with Rashaan Evans or Deron Payne. I'm okay if they call one of those two names. Harold Landry would be an awesome fit as well. I'm hoping they also maybe could be, a player in terms of trading back to get additional picks. But if a name comes across on the defense, somebody that can be of impact right away, I think going with Alabama sometimes can be, I would be okay with it. I would not have any problem with a Deron Payne or a Rashaan Evans anywhere at all. Maybe even a Mo Hurst. I know people are sliding him anywhere because if you're Mo Hurst, you got to be nervous because some people have you as high as 19. Some people have you dipping as all the way down in the 3rd round. So a guy like Mo Hurst might not be there, or he might be there too. So I would be okay with that as well. I want to quickly check in with some of the followers who messaged us because I did ask, what do you think if the Lions would take Darius Geis? Detroit Sports Jack gets in too high. I see no reason to draft a running back at the 20 spot. We can find a gem in the 2nd, possibly 3rd. Brian Bartle, probably not too good because running back is so deep. If he's at the top of the board and targets on defense are gone, if possible, trade back and get one of the guards, Daniels, Ragnow, Wynn, Hernandez, or Price. Kyle Pollack, I don't mind Geis as a player, but I feel like the board would have to fall the absolute worst way possible for me to like that in the 1st round. And finally, Andrew Carpenter gets in. Depends on what's there. I could think of worse options. So it's kind of a mixed bag. People are not totally against it because Darius Geis has been sold as a player. But at the same time, I think the Lions could get more value from drafting. I think the Lions could get more value from drafting a running back later and picking up an impact player now.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so let's just say we're gonna do hypothetical here. Let's just say the draft board falls this way. So in the 1st round, Lions take Harold Landry, and then 2nd round, Mo Hurst is still there. Do you take him in that 2nd round? So now you got your D tackle and you got your edge rusher for foreseeably the next 5 years.
Well, from what basically I think you and I can surmise, it seems like Bob Quinn has basically taken the best available at the board. And so I do think that that's been the strategy, right? When you look at Jared Davis, you look at positions of need as well. I do think that the strategy, is it safe to say that Bob Quinn typically takes the best guy available that also fits the need, a little bit of a combination of both? But it looks like from what I'm observing, it seems like the strategy is probably going to be to draft heavily early on defense and then potentially start mixing in the offense if they do running back, tight end, quarterback later in the draft. If they do keep 6, I would say this might be a potential draft where the Lions get 3 defenders and 3 offensive weapons if they stay at 6 picks total.
Do you think that that they're going to address, because I think we all agree they need to address the running back at some point in this draft. Do you think this is a draft where they go and they address that need somewhere in the 4th or 5th round? And if so, do you think they're going to get enough value there for a guy who's going to be able to make an immediate impact?
Well, when you look at New England and you look at what they do they have name running backs? No. They have a solid offensive line that keeps Tom Brady clean. They go with guys that have lesser value but fit a system. So I think the Lions are believing that if they improve, if they get rebound seasons from TJ Lang, Rick Wagner, then there's an opportunity to improve the running backs that they have. And that's why the argument could be made that they get a running back later in the draft. I think that's their best option. Is they do it, they do address it, but later in the draft. Maybe you can get a Nick Chubb, maybe in the 2nd round if he's there. But I know people are kind of starting to rate him high pretty well as well. So he might not even be there later in the draft.
Where would you be comfortable with the Lions addressing their running back need? Because I'm cool with it anywhere between rounds 1 through 3. If you're going to address your running back and you're going to start in rounds 4 through 7, I'm going to be upset. I think there's enough high-end quality guys anywhere from the 1st round all the way to the 3rd round. I don't want to start messing around with random guys in the 4th and 5th round. So where would you feel comfortable with them drafting a running back?
Exactly. I think what you said, probably 2nd to 4th round would make me the most comfortable with ideally probably getting a running back in the top 150 picks, maybe in the 3rd round. So I would be okay with that. But I do want to definitely ask you, okay, so we're looking at players, we're looking at which talent could help this Detroit Lions. What overall draft strategy would you like the Lions to employ? Do you feel like they just have to invest in a linebacker? Do you feel like defense along that line is a priority? What for you now, when you look at the makeup of the Lions roster, what do you think is the best strategy for the Lions to tackle with this draft in terms of acquiring the next wave of talent? Because they're going to probably get 6 to 8 guys that maybe have a strong chance of being on this team, because it looks like there's a concerted effort to go younger and a little bit more affordable now that you're paying Matthew Stafford a boatload of cash.
Now, this is all speculation because the draft can fall any sort of way and guys in front of you can take the guy that you were targeting. But the way I would like the Lions to approach this draft is I would like them to, in the 1st round, go defense, 2nd round, come back, grab your running back, and then go defense, grab your tight end in the 4th round, and then just complete the rest of your draft by filling in defensive needs that you need. So really defensively heavy, adding pieces that you need and that you're going to get some value out of. I think you can get good value for a running back in that 2nd round. You know, Sony Michel's there, Nick Chubb's there, Darian Johnson from Auburn. You go get these guys who have a ton of value and a ton of upside and can be plugged in and will make an immediate impact. Go grab those guys. As far as you're going to need a tight end, right? So I don't want to see you invest a high round pick. I don't need the Eric Ebron effect again. So you go in the 4th round, grab your tight end there, and then you just fill out the rest of your draft with defensive guys.
Gotcha.
What do you think is more likely to happen? Do you think that the Lions drafting a running back at 20, we've been talking a lot about running back here, do you think it's more likely that the Lions draft a running back at 20, or do you think it's maybe that they trade back and acquire more picks?
I really do. You know, when you look at the draft and you look at recent history, you know that someone's going to make a move. 1 or 2 organizations are going to move up or maybe take a player that kind of drastically shifts the board around, okay? And so what we have to hope basically as Lions fans is you probably would think that the Lions need more picks, right? They need a couple more picks to get out of that number 6. 6 picks is not enough. When you look at, a 7-round draft, most teams are getting in that 8 to 11, pick range and trying to acquire younger, affordable talent in your system. So you look at what you have to hope for as a Lions fan. I think the best case scenario is the board gets a little bit shifted, an organization goes up, or maybe a couple players come down that teams lower than the Lions really value. Maybe a Mo Hurst drops, maybe somebody like a Deron Payne or somebody like a Darius Geis that somebody really covets is there, and you can kind of create that bidding war so that you can get maybe a nice package to move down maybe a little bit later in the 1st round and acquire maybe a 2nd and a 4th, or maybe to acquire a package of picks. Do you see a scenario, though, in which maybe we're looking in the wrong direction because some people who message us speculate and say, you know what? Why not be aggressive? Why not maybe if you see that Cleveland's going to take a quarterback first, why not maybe put together a package, maybe a Ziggy Ansah, maybe put together a package, maybe include your quarterback and maybe throw your hat in the ring for a Saquon Barkley. Is there any scenario in which you see some aggressiveness from the Lions and maybe throwing in some picks in the future to maybe get that one guy that they target and say, you know what, if we get in the top 10, that he could put us over the top? Is there a top 10 defender? Because people think, okay, it's going to go, basically in the first 10 picks, 5 quarterbacks. Is there a top name defender that you think that maybe you've read about or that's going to be selected in the top 10? Maybe that the Lions could go up and be aggressive and select, because the name of the game in football is talent, and you now got a preeminent, talented defensive guy. Is there a guy in the top 15 on defense that maybe could look good in the Honolulu blue and silver?
Well, okay. So I've been high on, since we started talking mock drafts, I've been high on Vita Vea.
Yep.
He's a guy who I would love for them to get. I think he would really help this team out, help solidify that line. Everything that I read and everything that I see, Bradley Chubb seems to be the guy. Like, if you're looking to add a guy on your defense, it would be Bradley Chubb. So that would require you to move up probably 18 spots, maybe a little bit further, depending on what the Giants are going to do. So I don't know, look, I would love to tell you that they could trade Ziggy Ansah, include a package, trade him away, get that money off the books, kind of open things up, get another draft pick or two in here. But I don't know any team that's going to be dumb enough to go out there and trade away for a guy who the last 2 and 3 years has been really, really average.
Right, or
kind of good.
Yeah, or maybe you move up. Maybe you move up a little bit. Maybe you get linebacker Roquan Smith. I know I hear a lot of good things about him. He's projected to go between 10 and 15 right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that either. But again, I don't know who you're going to be able to trade or what you're going to be able to give up, because you're not trading Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford is a top 10 quarterback in this league. So you're going to trade a known commodity in Matt Stafford, who over the last couple of years has seemed to have gotten much better, for an unknown like a Sam Darnold, a Baker Mayfield, a Josh Allen, for because you need a quarterback, not unless you believe in either Matt Castle or Jake Rudock. So you're gonna have to draft a quarterback then. So now you're trading a piece away to have to go out there and invest in something else. And I don't think you're gonna do that. And I don't think anybody in the NFL would ever pass up on Matt Stafford. I think if they were being offered Matt Stafford, they're taking him all day long. So I don't think you're going to do that, but I don't think you have any other pieces that are going to really garner you anything else. I mean, nobody wants Amir Abdullah. We don't want Amir Abdullah. Theo Riddick is a guy. You could find a million Theo Riddicks. Do you know what I'm saying? As far as guys on your defense, you're not trading any of those guys away because you need all of them, because your defense is hemorrhaging guys right now. So I don't think you have enough pieces. If you wanted to look at a guy that you could possibly trade away, maybe Golden Tate. I know there's a lot of talk coming out of his camp that he wants a new contract and he wants to stay here. Golden Tate has done a lot of nice things, and you could possibly trade him away. I don't know if that's going to be the case, though, because depending on what Matt Patricia wants to do, Golden Tate is that prototypical New England-style wide receiver. A guy who really is a possession guy, can kind of turn it on, break loose. He's a little bit shifty. He can sit there and he can hit the home run every now and again, but you know what you can get out of him. You know he's going to catch the ball every time you throw it to him. So I don't know if you would want to trade a guy like that to get a draft pick or two. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Yes. I think that's somebody you can weigh down a little bit, and then you can try to trade him away.
Some sleepers some sleepers that may be on the Lions' radar. Cornerback from Iowa, Josh Jackson. Jair Alexander, cornerback from Louisville. Mo Hurst, obviously, is a name that people are talking about. The ones that you don't like, Will Hernandez is there. Wide receiver DJ Moore is in the mix. The one name, though, that I'm reading a lot more about.
The wide receiver?
No, I think that would be the ultimate. That would freak everybody out if they took an offensive targeted player, a premier player like a wide receiver. That would freak everybody out. Oh my God!
I think that would piss me off.
Oh yeah.
What are we doing? What are we doing? We got enough wide receivers. We don't need one right now.
Exactly. Now a name.
And you know what? I got a couple questions for you real quick. And this is just like random things that are associated with the draft. I just kind of want to gauge where you're at with all this. What do you make of the Cleveland.com report that the Browns have narrowed their number one draft pick to Josh Allen or Baker Mayfield? I think if they take Baker Mayfield, now I love Baker Mayfield. I've been on record for a long time saying I love Baker Mayfield. I love the way he plays. I love his passion. I love the fact that he just doesn't give a flying you-know-what. I think he's awesome, okay? He's a guy who I would love to go drink beers with. All that being said, I don't know if I want that guy as my franchise quarterback, especially in Cleveland. But I find it interesting that he's in the mix as well as Josh Allen is in the mix, because these are two guys who you could make cases for that don't deserve to be the number one overall pick. I think with Josh Allen, he's a quarterback coming out of Wyoming, and I think at this point everybody's like, oh, maybe we can go the Carson Wentz route here, and you're going to get that. Wyoming is becoming a quarterback factory, so maybe you trust the lineage because of one guy. I don't know though. It's really weird. This is a strange draft to me because I could see 6 quarterbacks going in the first round, and in the first 5 picks, I could see 4 of those quarterbacks going. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't think any of them could pan out to be anything. They could all be huge just busts. So I find it to be a really, really strange draft.
Me too, because most people, by all account, most people that are looking at the draft and saying who's the best quarterback is Sam Darnold, but reports are coming out that they've soured on him. I see it. He's the number one guy. I think you have an opportunity with how Cleveland set it up. You got Tyrod Taylor. I think Tyrod could have a decent season, at least as a makeshift guy for 1 year. Let Sam Darnold learn from him, and then you hope that in year 2 or 3, I think a strategy for Cleveland has to be just be patient a little bit, not throw your young quarterback, whoever you decide. Most people do believe pick 1 is probably going to be a quarterback, whoever it may be. I think the best strategy is let Tyrod Taylor, whatever happens, even if you lose 16 games again, acquire those picks and try your absolute best to move forward. I thought Sam Darnold, based on what everyone's saying, looks like the best quarterback, but if it ends up being between Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield, I think the pick that most people would think a Cleveland team would make is Baker Mayfield, and let him learn and sit behind a Tyrod Taylor. But I think you and I can laugh and sit back and go, from experience being part of an organization for a decade that didn't know how to draft, the Lions figured out that, okay, let's just become a wide receiver factory and draft every bum wide receiver known to man. Most of us are thinking that whoever the Cleveland Browns take, it's probably going to be a bust because of the fact the organization just isn't good enough to solidify and support a young, talented individual. You just think that, imagine if Carson Wentz went to Cleveland. I mean, all they had to do was look at the film, and he goes over to Philadelphia, does great things. They pass on him. So I feel bad for, really, the person I feel the worst for is anybody that has to go to Cleveland, because it's going to be a couple years of losing. There's no confidence they're going to do anything serious over there in Cleveland. But I think the best quarterback is Sam Darnold. They should take him. But if they don't, I think then it's going to be either Sam Darnold, or I think that the souring note is basically maybe a smokescreen, and I think Sam Darnold still will be the name that they take number 1.
You know what this draft with these quarterbacks reminds me of? It reminds me of the Carson Wentz, Jared Goff quarterback debate. Because if you go back and you remember when they got drafted, we were having this debate like, are either one of these guys, do they deserve to be the number 1 overall pick? Are either one of these guys going to be good? And we all had question marks. And I think they've all turned out to be pretty solid. Both of them have turned out to be pretty solid quarterbacks, and we both would agree that the organizations that took them did a great job drafting those guys and then building their coaches around those guys. So I think all these quarterbacks in this draft, they all have flaws. They all have issues. But if you put them on the right team and you almost cater to their needs, like you try to hide whatever they're deficient in, I think you can get some decent quarterbacks out of this draft, but you need a coaching staff that has a little bit of foresight. I mean, you look at what the Rams have done with Jared Goff, and you look at what Philadelphia has done with Carson Wentz. It's remarkable and it's unbelievable, because a few years ago we were talking about these guys like they didn't even deserve to be on the bottom of your shoe. So, I agree with you that Sam Darnold looks to be the best quarterback in this draft. I would just actually, before we started, I was watching a video on NFL.com with, do you know John Brinkus and Trent Dilfer went over to NFL.com? I had no idea. I thought they were still with ESPN. Anyway, John Brinkus is over there doing some sports science stuff with NFL.com. It's called like Soul and Science. It's interesting. Anyways, they had Sam Darnold on, and they were showing the way he gets the ball out and different things, talking about his athleticism. And he is an athletic freak of nature. It's just he's really inconsistent sometimes, and he turns the ball over. What do you make of a guy like Josh Rosen? I think he might have what it takes to be the best quarterback in this draft.
See, I think that when you start really looking at it, I know it's a hyped up class. I don't really see that many impactful guys. I don't even see an Andrew Luck in this class. I think you're going to get a bunch of guys that are going to bounce around. Maybe Darnold or Josh Allen has a chance. But in terms of the 6 quarterbacks, maybe you see one of them that have great success. But in terms of this class overall, I think that there's a lot of room for improvement for a lot of these guys. So I'm not really impressed by a lot of them. And so that's why people who say, maybe trade Stafford, I go, well, not for this class. I think this class has a lot of work to do. And I do think that, the class before has been a little bit better. Maybe even, the likes of a Lamar Jackson could maybe even sneak in there, drafted 6th because of the fact that he was, disrespected. I think maybe one of the lower end guys drafted 5th or 6th among this group could do some things.
I think Lamar Jackson could go to the Saints, and I think that'd almost be a perfect spot for him, because if you look at what the Saints have done, now Drew Brees isn't necessarily your prototypical quarterback. Yeah, he's a drop back passer, but he's a little guy, he's short, he has to stand up on his tippy toes to get the ball over the line. So they're able to sit there and kind of mold their offense around the strength of the quarterback. So I think if Lamar Jackson was to continue to fall, and he was to fall to, say, 27, where the Saints are picking, I think he would fit in perfectly there. And you look at that run game that they have. I mean, they've got Mark Ingram, who's a thumper. They've got Alvin Kamara, who seems to be their every down back. The guy can do everything. And now you add in Lamar Jackson. I just think what they could do on the ground would be amazing. Now, look, I know a quarterback has to be able to throw the ball and get the ball down the field. I think the guy can hit passes and get the ball down the field. I just think it'd be interesting, because I feel like they could mold their offense and kind of shift it away from Drew Brees, because I think he only has, another year, maybe 2 years left on his contract. So Lamar can kind of sit there and learn at the knee of Drew Brees, and then he can kind of come in and take over. And yeah, there'll probably be a coaching change, which makes me a little bit nervous, but I think he could learn at the behest of Drew Brees and become a much better quarterback, and not necessarily run all the time, but have that threat and be elusive enough to where he can get out. Almost like Deshaun Watson. You've seen what he did with the Texans this year. Amazing,
Yes. Now, before we look at the Lions draft from other media personalities, I just want to say a quick word about our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. It's the hub of the operation. It's where you can go check out what show airs when. You can go take care of all your online shopping needs. The free and easy way to support us here on the network is to go visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. It's how we've been able to broadcast almost daily, every single day for the last 5 years. And now we have our own studio where great guests like Dan Dickerson call into, where great guests from the University of Michigan, Michigan State even might want to visit in the near future. Thank you for your continued support. We greatly appreciate it. Keep going to the internet. Keep going to DetroitSportsPodcast.com. We greatly appreciate it. Now, cuz the Lions draft has been looked at a myriad of ways, but some of the notable media personalities have a lot of good thoughts as well. And I want to get your sense quickly of these 3 guys and what you think of some mock drafts. ESPN's Michael Rothstein is saying the defensive line is going to be a major focus of this draft due to Ziggy Ansah being tendered a franchise tag and Kerry Hyder coming off of an Achilles injury. What do you make of his thoughts that the defensive line is going to be a major focus?
I think that's spot on. I mean, we've discussed it. We both want them to go D-line. I think it has to be, because you've got so many missing spots on that defensive line, or guys who I don't necessarily feel will make a huge impact. And the one thing about this team, and one thing about this league, you have to pressure the quarterback. And this team did not do a good enough job last year pressuring the quarterback. And look, I don't think Ziggy Ansah deserved that 1-year tender. I understand why they did it. I don't think it should have been done. I think you could have took that money and invested it somewhere else. You could have addressed a lot of the holes on your defensive line by not franchising Ziggy Ansah. And I understand that there weren't a lot of edge rushers, and I get all of that. But I don't think Ziggy is worth the money that you're paying him right now. I think it's a one-and-done year for him. I think he'll be out after this year, and then you're going to have to move on to something else. So I think it's just a stopgap type deal. You're going to have to address this defensive line, whether it be the tackle position or it be the edge rusher position. You have to address it because you've got too many holes up and down it. And I wouldn't be surprised if you mixed in a linebacker as well. I think defense is going to be extremely heavy for this team this year with this draft.
Now, Justin Rogers, great beat writer for the Detroit News, he put out an article, and he put together 5 3-round draft scenarios, and I only liked 2 of them. I liked scenario 1, where he's got the Lions taking Daron Payne, defensive tackle, Alabama. Scenario 2, Will Hernandez, lukewarm. Scenario 3, I really like Harold Landry, Boston College edge rusher. Scenario 4 and 5, I'm not down with, but I do feel like there's a greater chance there's a scenario in which the Lions take a player that I don't like. In his scenario 4, he's got the Lions taking Darius Geis, running back. And in scenario 5, he's got Taven Bryan, the defensive tackle out of Florida. So it's kind of looking like it's going to be good for the doc to watch because it's going to be 50-50 whether the Detroit Lions take somebody that I want. What did you make of his 5 3-round NFL draft scenarios? Very interesting. You could see basically the Lions, and you could make arguments for all 5 that he put together.
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm in lockstep with you here. So his scenario 1, his first round, he takes Daron Payne out of Alabama, the defensive tackle. Round 2, he takes Nick Chubb, running back out of Georgia. And then third round, he comes back and addresses his edge with Josh Sweet out of Florida State. I like that because you're addressing your defense and you're addressing your run game. And Nick Chubb might be a special running back. He might be a really Nick Chubb could be almost like Kareem Hunt, a guy who kind of falls to a later round. And his second round is not really that much later, but falls to the second round. You get him, and you get a ton of production out of him. As far as scenario 2 goes, again, I've already said I would be upset if their first round pick is a guard position. So Will Hernandez or Isaiah Wynn, I'm not happy with. Then he comes back with Sam Hubbard, the defensive end out of Ohio State, and Harrison Phillips, defensive tackle out of Stanford. I don't want that. I think there are other positions that you need to address first and guys that are going to make more of an impact. Now, scenario 3, that's one that I like a lot, and that has a running back that I like a lot. That's Harold Landry, your edge rusher out of Boston College. He would be your heir apparent to take over Ziggy Ansah. I love it. I think it's great because now, again, Ziggy Ansah is on a one and done. He's out after this year. Harold Landry is the guy who's going to take over that spot. He's going to be your future edge rusher, the guy who's going to get you your quarterback and disrupt everything. You come back that second round, you get your home run hitter with Sony Michel, the running back out of Georgia, and then Jesse Bates, safety out of Wake Forest. Scenario 4, I didn't necessarily mind, but I think you could have utilized the picks a little bit different. And scenario 4 was the one where Darius Geis goes in the first round. Second round, he takes Rasheem Green, the defensive end out of USC. And third round, you take Nathan Shepard, defensive tackle out of Fort Hays State. Now, the reason why I don't mind this is because you get your running back, and then you invest heavily the next 2 rounds in addressing your defensive line, and that's something that we've discussed on this podcast. We will both agree that you got to address your defensive line and you got to address running back. So I didn't necessarily mind that. Scenario 5, I absolutely hate. Taven Bryan, I don't know what he's going to be. Really similar to Marcus Davenport. He's an athletic guy. Everybody compares him to J.J. Watt or possibly being like Ndamukong Suh. I don't know. I don't see that. I think he's a really raw guy. He knows how to get to the quarterback. He knows how to disrupt the pass game. That's cool, but there's more to it. You're going to have to, again, coach him up a little bit. Second round, he comes back, takes either James Daniel or Billy Price, offensive line. And then third round, Kalen Ballage, running back out of Arizona State. I don't know anything about that running back. So I'd love to tell you that I hate that choice or that I love that choice, but I don't know enough about him. I didn't even know he existed. So I guess my bad for not doing enough research on that. But yeah, I'm in lockstep with you. I think we both agree that they have to address their defensive line and running back early in this draft.
The funniest thing is, one thing I don't do is I typically don't go through and read anybody's complete 7-round mock draft. I think that's really
no, I do that.
No, that's hard to do, man. It takes a lot of moxie to put together because of all the trades. Who has time to put together 7 complete rounds every pick? You have a Mr. Irrelevant. That takes a lot of research, and it just doesn't seem like you get a lot of return on investment for those that click through it. I'm sure if you did any analytics, rounds 4 through 7, nobody's clicking through, but NFL.com's Chad Reuter actually took the chance and did it. Do you read 7-round mock drafts? And what do you think about Chad and what he tried to do complete 7-round mock drafts. When you get that assignment, you got to be like, dude, am I in the doghouse? 7 rounds? Can I just do 1 through 3? My God.
You know I did, because I'm a loser, dude. I love mock drafts. I love the NFL, dude. So, yeah, of course I read through this. I was sitting there looking at who was drafted. I was like, why do you put that guy there? That doesn't make any sense to me. I started doing my own mock draft in my head. But, yeah, I'm a loser, man. It's what I do. In this mock draft, though, he's got the Detroit Lions in the first round at 20, taking Harold Landry, the edge rusher out of Boston College. He then follows that up with Harrison Phillips, the defensive tackle out of Stanford. Now, I like those 2 picks. I think that helps this team out a lot. Now, where it starts to get a little sideways for me is rounds 3, 4, 5, and 7. He takes Mark Andrews, tight end out of Oklahoma, in the 3rd round with the 82nd pick, 117th in round 4. He takes Quentin Meeks, cornerback out of Stanford. Round 5, he takes Josh Adams, running back out of Notre Dame. Now, since I am in Notre Dame country, dude, their sports talk radio here. We'll just leave it at that. We'll talk about it off air. Anyways, they love this guy, Josh Adams. And I don't know how I feel about him. Again, I don't want you taking a running back in the 5th round. I want you to address that earlier. In round 7, at pick 237, they take Nick Shimanek, quarterback out of Texas Tech. I think it's okay. Again, I like the first 2 rounds. I was sold on the first 2 rounds. It gets a little sideways for me. If you think that tight end is going to sit there and be a difference maker, Mark Andrews is going to be a difference maker. He can sit there and he can block and he can catch the ball. I'm okay with it. All right. And if you think Josh Adams will be able to grow into being at least a 2-down back, a guy where you can leave him out there when passing downs, and a guy who you can leave out there in running downs, I'll be fine with it. I don't necessarily need him to be a 3rd down back for me. I just need him to be out there for at least the first 2 so he can either run or pass or whatever. I guess I'd be okay with it. I just have a lot of questions because it gets a little bit weird rounds 3 through 7 for me.
Understood, man.
What do you think?
I think it's great. I think that it goes in line with what I want the Detroit Lions to do. I agree with you. I thought it went a little bit left, and that's why I did peek at it for the sake of the show, but I'm just like, look at all these names. I'm like, I don't even know half of these players. I'm good with around the first 100 players, names I've heard of, names you can read about, but after 100 names, then everybody's just a crapshoot, and then you get lucky, and you can go back a year or 2 from now and go, oh, okay, you know what? That guy in the 6th round really used motivation. But remember, rounds 6 and 7 are a lot of guys that you know are probably going to end up in the new XFL in 3 years. So we can maybe invest some time to look at them. But in terms of impact in the league, there's only a handful of guys later in the rounds that really make a lot of impact. Then the rest of the guys kind of shuffle around, and they get into that whole 2 or 3 year career. Sometimes it's even worth noting who goes undrafted, because right away, as soon as the draft is done, a lot of guys get invited. A lot of dudes also make rosters similar to the Detroit Lions now. We're starting to see, oh my gosh, there's guys that make the roster and contribute that don't even get drafted. So I know people are a little bit tired of draft analysis and things like that, but there is value in at least looking and seeing what these analysts are looking at. And so it's fun. I was peeking at most of the names, going, okay, who's going from state, who's going on from Michigan and things like that. And it's going to be a very wild 4 days, a time where everybody is excited, and one where I can't wait for the opportunity to text you and be like, okay, what do you think? I think the opportunity to pinpoint it, if we want to say who the Lions are going to take at 20, I think it's going to be either Harold Landry or Darren Payne. So those are the 2 guys. I think it's going to be, if I want to lock down who the Lions are going to take from the dock, I think it's going to be Darren Payne or Harold Landry, and I think everybody's going to be pretty much happy. Now, if they go twisted and they go somewhere else, man, I hope they don't, because we'll have an opportunity all next week and right away on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast to break it all down.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I think if they go with either one of those 2 guys, I think everybody will be happy. I wouldn't be surprised if Darius Geis gets selected at 20 by the Lions.
No.
I know that would drive you nuts, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. It wouldn't surprise me in the least bit. And I don't think I'd be all that upset about it, because you'd lock up your running back position, hopefully, for the next 5 years. So I'd be okay with it, I guess.
All right.
As long as they don't take an offensive lineman, I'll be okay.
All right, great podcast recording. Thank you so much for investing the time. I know you're in God's country there in South Bend. Welcome back. Get back quickly.
Golden Dome.
Yeah, Golden Dome, man. Go check it out. Maybe get some interviews. Maybe walk up and be like, hey, is there a coach here we can talk to? Maybe let's go and see what's going on.
I should see what I can go do.
Yeah, man. Good stuff. Good stuff. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, live recording from his great place in South Bend, Indiana, I am the Doc, John McEnroe. Thank you so much for spending the last hour with us. We greatly appreciate it. If you've liked what we said, if you totally hate it, if there's somebody we didn't even mention, somebody, from Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan State, somebody that you think can make some impact that we didn't even talk about, message us 24/7 on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. You can message Adam at AdamRSTROZ. We'll talk to everybody next week. Stay with us. We look forward to it. Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Go Lions.